As President-elect Trump prepares to return to the White House, it is clear that the tech industry is, you guessed it, they're preparing for it too. Already, Amazon plans to make a $1 million donation to Trump's inaugural fund ahead of Jeff Bezos' visit to Mar-a-Lago next week. Google's CEO is also reportedly meeting with Mr. Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Even OpenAI CEO Sam Altman will be donating, you guessed it, $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund. Oh, and by the way, Mark Zuckerberg's Meta announced that they're doing the very same. So the question is, what's behind the shift? Here to discuss is DNC National Finance Committee member Lindy Lee. You know, it's interesting because I think a lot of people are saying they're trying to get ahead of what could be more regulatory restrictions on them and maybe a bit of a microscope on their operations. What do you think's behind all this?
Kevin, it's great to be with you.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, the Democratic Party has a stench of loser written all over the party, and I'm sorry. And I'm speaking as a Democrat myself. This brings me no joy to say it, but I feel like the Democrats are going to be consigned to the wilderness for at least the next 4 to 8 years. And Jeff Bezos is probably thanking his lucky stars that he withheld that endorsement. And they're doing everything they can now to continue the détente. Remember what Zuckerberg said on July 13th when in Butler, Pennsylvania, there was an assassination attempt. He praised President Trump for being a badass.
Ever since Donald Trump's amazing presidential win, there have actually been two interesting things happening. First, a lot of people who you wouldn't really consider to be Donald Trump supporters are really warming up to the idea of working with him because, of course, everyone loves a winner, and it's always nice to be in the good graces of the guy in charge. Second, you have a lot of people on the left and the Democrat Party itself actually scratching their heads and wondering, what in the world did we do wrong? They're starting to be a little introspective about what happened. And while I'm hopeful they haven't actually learned anything, they're starting to come out and actually voice that opinion, as we're going to see today, surprisingly, from Sunny Hostin over on The View. But before we get to these clips, please like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
MAGA is the Republican Party, and Donald Trump is the Republican Party today. And if you were to ask me who the nominee will be in 2028, I think it'll be J.D. Vance.
But we're witnessing kind of a tectonic shift of political realignment. The Republican Party is now the party of the working class. It's the party of not wanting American intervention abroad. It's the one talking about how we need to end forever wars. And you've got the Democratic Party that, in many ways, it's a lot of higher educated people, higher net worth people. And it's a flipping on ahead of what we thought of 20 years ago. I think a lot of people feel like they don't fit cleanly into either of them. In some ways, I feel that way. But he is right. Trump is the dominant force in Republican politics. I don't think it's going back, but I hope there's Republicans who work within the party to keep guardrails on it and to make it something, you know, those of us who've been members of it our whole lives could be part of.
He is the party. You know, and as I've been saying, you know, I think that the Republican Party maybe needs to reframe the question instead of thinking about what the Democrats need to do. Maybe think about why is a convicted felon so attracted to this country, or why are we so attracted, so many of us who are convicted felon, and Elon Musk, who said you will feel the working class temporary hardships, you know. Since when is the
Isn't
Republican
he the richest
Party?
man in the world?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
And he's not going to have any temporary hardships. But then I'm kind of rethinking my thinking, and I do think that maybe it's time for the Democrats to do a little bit of this postmortem, because the Democratic Party has always been the party of the working class, has always been. If you look at all the policies, they're for the people. And I think even myself, as someone who grew up in abject poverty from the Bronx, my parents lived paycheck to paycheck. They had to decide whether or not they were going to feed me or whether or not we were going to have heat. And I remember that. And I think I missed the boat in terms of realizing that there are so many Americans that still have that experience that I grew up with and that members of my family grew up with. And so I think we need to make space in this tent for the people that are really going to need it, because I got to tell you, I don't think the Republican Party is the party of the working class. I think they will hurt the working class. And so it is up to those of us who remember how that feels or who cares about that to reach out and say, come back, we can help you. And I intend myself, what little I can do, to try to do that more.
So Sunny Hostin is basically admitting here that she's become so successful, so wealthy, that she has grown out of touch with the working class, out of touch with middle America, and of course losing all contact with her roots. And I find it interesting that Donald Trump, a billionaire, connects more with the average working class American than of course all of these talking heads, all of these left-wingers that supposedly represent the Democrat Party. Okay, now why in the world would that be? Because Donald Trump cares about jobs. He cares about creating opportunity and success for people, whereas the Democrat Party has really been only concerned about lining their own pockets. And by the way, I do take a little bit of an issue here by saying the Democrats are the party of the working class. I know they've been viewed that way for a long time, but basically they're the party of higher taxes and redistributing wealth, trying to buy votes, right? They're the party of freebies, okay? And that is never good for the working class. What is good for the working class is what Republicans have always stood for: lower taxes, better business relations, which of course leads to more businesses opening up, which leads to more jobs, which of course leads to more competition and higher wages, which of course is much better for the working class. So this whole idea that yes, things are flopped on their head, I would just say it's finally a realization that the Democrat Party never stood for you in the first place. They want to give you just enough to live on, but not enough to be successful or to have the opportunity to grow up in the ranks of America. But at the very least, Sunny is admitting she has to do a little soul searching to figure out what the heck went wrong. Why did the working class abandon the Democrats? She wants to get them back into the tent because the Democrats kicked them out into the cold a long time ago. But of course, she's not the only Democrat to see what's going on here.
Let's talk big picture Democratic Party post-election. All this talk about soul searching, what has to change. Well, you've got a new piece. I'm going to read from your piece in Newsweek. It's titled, DNC should move DC headquarters to Youngstown, Ohio. That's where you're from, Youngstown, Ohio. You've been talking about what happened on Election Day for 10 years or so. You come on this show and saying, we're losing these people. We need to work harder to keep these people. So now that I think a lot of Democrats have woken up to what you've been saying for a while, what now for Democrats?
Oh, well, I'd say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek of move the headquarters to Youngstown, Ohio, where there's working class people. It's an old factory town. They're gritty. We've created a great coaching culture. Youngstown has been known as the cradle of coaches, the Stoops brothers, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer's not from far away. We've created this culture of how are you gritty? How do you lead? How are you disciplined? And how do you have some straight talk, like honest conversations with people so that your team trusts you? And I think Democrats have lost that trust. So I say Youngstown. It could be Flint. It could be Detroit, Toledo, Steubenville, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh. It doesn't matter. It just can't be in freaking Washington, D.C. Like, how many times are we going to talk to ourselves about something that's irrelevant to that person in Youngstown, Ohio, who comes out of that culture, the economic anxiety and all of that? And so it can't be in Washington, D.C.
Tim Ryan makes an excellent point that I hope the Democrats don't listen to, okay? Get your headquarters out of Washington, D.C. Joe Biden won that area with 86.5% of the vote. This is not a place where you have opposing viewpoints, right? This is a place that is a bubble. No one listens to anyone outside of it, okay? So, of course, moving your headquarters to some other place where you actually have working class people with differing opinions would go much better for the party. But as I said, I hope they do not listen. The Democrats have grown so out of touch that a move like this would only benefit them, right? They have no idea the problems that Americans are facing, right? The pains we feel at the gas pump, the pains we feel at the grocery store, the pains we feel on the streets as crime continues to rise. These are all things that your average everyday American has to live through. But of course, all of these out of touch elitists will never even come close to understanding any of it, which is why they will continue to lose. So please, Democrats, do not listen to any of this advice. But also you have people who are so dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, they don't want to admit when they have been beaten, and they're going to dig in their heels to oppose Donald Trump every step of the way.
Tell me about how you at the ACLU are thinking about your plans to try to defend American civil liberties in this term versus the first term.
Litigation is going to be key. The courts still are a place we would have to turn to. But local governments, the state attorneys general, the governors, the mayors, we have this whole plan around a firewall for freedom, we call it. The idea that these local officials can really play an important role in stopping the worst of the government abuses.
How so?
Well, for instance, when they're going to try to detain and deport all these hundreds of thousands, up to 1 million people, that's an operation that they have the legal power to do the raids, but the logistics. And they're going to need mayors and governors or city councils to either give them access to police officers or not, jails. Where are you going to house all these folks? Right? And so part of what we're doing is we're preparing executive orders and we're organizing our folks to put pressures on elected officials so they don't roll over. They should sever these relationships they have with the federal government on immigration enforcement. They should make sure that our prisons and our jails are off limits. They should begin to think about what actions they could take to pardon immigrants who have a criminal record.
So that's the ACLU Executive President Anthony Romero, the American Civil Liberties Union. And what is he talking about? He's talking about bringing forth all types of lawfare to stop Donald Trump from doing the mandate that he was given by the American people. And that, of course, is to deport criminal illegal aliens. However, this is what Democrats always do. They are very litigious, right? If you remember Donald Trump's first term, every single time he tried to do something, it went right to the courts. And that delayed him by months and possibly years. And already they're gearing up to throw a wrench in the works, which is why I'm very hopeful that the left and the Democrats have not learned any lessons from 2024, and then we can keep winning into the future, 2028 and beyond. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.